Well, these results were more surprising than I expected. Welcome to the Hippie Geeks. Let's take another look at the SE3000 EVO, this time inside of the Spider Farmer 28-inch by 28-inch grow tent. We recently had an initial look at the SE3000 EVO and did our par measurements inside of a 3-foot by 3-foot grow tent, which is what the company recommends. That is a fine matchup and gives you a lot of light inside of a tent that size, but as I have mentioned many times, I prefer to put the largest light that I can fit inside of a grow tent, and that is what we are going to be looking at today. If you want to compare these numbers against the par values that we saw inside of the 3-foot by 3-foot tent, I will leave a link to that video in the description below. With that said, let's take a look at the numbers that I just measured inside of the smaller tent, and to say that I was surprised would be an understatement. Starting off all the way down at 12 inches, and the biggest differences you are going to see at this height are the numbers around the perimeter of the tent, which is to be expected. All of the levels are up, however, even in the center of the tent. You can also see just how much more even the numbers are across the entire canopy, and that is going to continue at every height as we start to raise the light up more and more. It really is hard to believe how much difference having a smaller canopy with the reflective walls being right next to the light makes, but you can definitely see it at this height. You do get some weird things happening with the reflections from the sides of the tent though. As you can see here, the lower right corner is just as bright as the center of the tent, and you tend to have things like that happen in a tent this small with a light this big. Moving up to 18 inches, you are going to see that the center of the tent has dropped off a little, while the outside perimeter measurements have actually come up. That is because even with the light filling the tent at 12 inches, the light ends up getting kind of stuck right beneath the light bars, which is another reason why we had the weird variances in the light levels. Now that it is up a little further, the light is able to reflect more and cover the entire area more evenly. In the larger tent, the far corners were sitting anywhere from 350 par to just over 500 par, while in the smaller tent we are seeing anywhere from 750 par to over 1100 par. This is way too intense for most plants that you are going to grow, so if you are going to have the light this close, you will likely want to actually turn the light down some, as you don't want to cook your plants when they are this close to the SE3000 EVO. Moving the light up to 24 inches above the sensor, and we are going to see that the light levels across the entire canopy have started to drop off, which is what we will also see moving forward. However, the numbers across the board are still higher than they were in the larger tent, which again isn't surprising. In the 3-foot by 3-foot tent, we were seeing par levels between 370 and 460 in the far corners, while in the smaller tent we are seeing between 650 and 820. The center numbers are also up higher, going from just over 700 par in the larger tent to 920 in this one. This light is still pretty intense, and if you need to figure out what the light levels are at different power settings, you would use the par X multiplier on the screen. Let's say that you have the SE3000 EVO hung at 24 inches, where the light level in the center is 919 par, but you want to know what it would be if you set it at 60% power. You would multiply the par value on the screen by the dial 60 par X value of 0.64, which would give you 588 par. You can also do that with any of the numbers that we have taken for the entire video, and that should get you pretty close to what the measurement would be. We are going to go ahead and move the light to 30 inches above the sensor, and with the light at full power at this height, you could use this setting to comfortably flower out a medicinal grow, especially if most of your growth is in the center of the tent. Looking back at the numbers that we were seeing in the 3-foot by 3-foot tent, the far corners ranged from 350 to 417 par, with the center sitting at just over 550. The readings in the smaller tent, however, are still higher, with the corners ranging from 570 par to just over 700 par, with the center sitting at 800 par, which are great numbers. This would be great light levels for flowering out your canopy, and you would have all the space in the world to work on the plant when the light is this far above the canopy. You may not have that amount of room inside of a grow tent, however, so you may end up having the light closer to the canopy and turn it down enough to give you the light levels that you need. Next up, we are moving the light to 36 inches above the sensor, and we are going to see the most even light levels yet across the entire canopy, ranging from 512 par in one of the corners to just over 700 par in the middle area. The light levels in the larger tent were also pretty even at this height, but the numbers were lower. The light levels in that tent ranged from 336 in one of the corners to 485 in the center, which is almost a 200 par difference at every measurement point. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned that these results surprised me, and they do every time. However, we have seen this before when testing lights in different sized tents, and that is the reason that I have always said that I prefer to put the largest light possible inside of a tent. As always, that is going to depend on your budget when you are putting your setup together, but if you can afford to go with the larger light, you totally should. Finally, we are going to take a look at the readings when the light is 48 inches above the sensor, and the incredible thing to look at here is that the light levels are higher in the smaller tent at 48 inches than the light levels were inside of the 3x3 tent at 30 inches. That should really drive home the difference in the light levels that we are seeing with this test, and the only thing that has changed between these measurements are the size of the tent. I don't have an actual 2 foot by 2 foot tent to test in, but as that is even smaller, we would likely see a small but noticeable bump in the light levels in a tent that size as well. For the most part, no one is going to be running this light in a tent this size at this height, but as always, I like to include it as we have always done these measurements at these heights, and it makes it easy to compare everything when the heights are all the same. If you want to check out the Spider Farmer SE3000 EVO or any of their other gear for yourself, make sure to click on the link to their website in the video description down below and use the discount code GEEKS at checkout to get 8% off your entire order.